Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's live Empowered Consent Conversations. I'm so very happy to be here with you all once again. I am Christina McCabe, relationship and sex coach. I love to focus in all my work on the erotic blueprints, consent, and speaking our authentic desires. It is my absolute joy to help couples and individuals clarify and express their wants and needs so they can experience deep intimacy and that amazing sex life we're all desiring. I'm also deeply passionate about consent, which is why we're here. Okay, so each week we are coming together to do these empowered consent conversations in a way to get you the tools to create empowered consent in all your relationships in the way that gets you really heard, understood, and fulfilled. We are focusing all of our exploration on consent in a way that allows it to be exciting, to be healing, to be inspiring, to let it be that doorway to deeper intimacy and connection I believe we're all really looking for. I'm also each week gathering experts in the fields of intimacy, sexuality, and consent to dive deeper into understanding how empowered consent practices can up-level all of your relationships. Today, we are gathered to talk about empowered consent and active listening. And this week, I'm joined by my gorgeous guest experts, Alex Alexander and Ryan Brown, and I'm going to bring them on camera in just a minute to introduce themselves to you. But first, I want you to take a look at the description above, because there you're going to find Alex, Ryan, and my contact information. You're also going to see the YouTube link if you're on Facebook so that you can watch past forum replays. Go ahead and subscribe there so you can get notified when we go live again. We all also love for you to get involved here. So feel free to ask questions, make comments via the chat, and I will monitor them to get you heard if I am at all able to. All right, let's get into our conversation. We're going to bring in Alex and Ryan. Welcome. So
Good afternoon, or morning,
Afternoon.
or evening, or wherever it is, whatever
Happy to be
time.
here.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers? Tell a little about yourself.
Sure. I'm Alex Alexander. I'm an erotic blueprint coach, which is where I've met Christina, and I'm a certified erotic blueprint coach. But that wasn't the first thing that I got certified in. Actually, it was sort of like my fifth pillar. I had to first learn how to, I did some energy healing certification over 2.5 years, learning how to like be in my body. Then I did some somatic therapeutic work, learning how to be in my body and be with all the emotions and all the trauma healing that I had. I'm a trauma survivor. I had some major trauma as a child. And then I had to learn connection with people. So I went in through a sisterhood and found sisterhood. And since a lot of my trauma was with another woman, with my mother, I had a deep distrust of women. So I had to like work through that with going through a sisterhood thing. And then after that, it was sexuality and sensuality, because I was having trouble in a relationship and nothing I could do was like solving the issue. And then I ran across the erotic blueprints and it was like, oh, this is the question. This is the problem, because we're not talking in the same languages to each other. So so I do a lot of work with trauma, people who have trauma patterns in their life, whether it's like, harsh traumas or those developmental traumas that everyone has. I work with just really holding space, holding deep and sacred, non-judgmental, loving present space for people so that they can drop into whatever they need to kind of experience in their life or experience in that moment. And as we all know, we have to feel it to heal it. So I just assist people in doing that, really. So,
Yum.
Nice.
Amazing work you're doing, Alex. I'm so happy you're joining. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I am Ryan Brown. I'm also an erotic blueprint coach, newly certified, actually just this year. My background is varied. How I got here is an interesting tale that I won't be telling today. But I think the key point is that I've spent, the previous 7 years working in a therapeutic position, helping children and families manage difficult behaviors. And then I became connected to the Erotic Blueprints through my partner. And that really settled in to me as like, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. And so I decided to make a change, a shift from that previous role into the role of coaching others. And my purpose, like, what do I really want to do? I just want more joy in the world, more joy, less fear. I really love that the organization behind the Erotic Blueprints is very vocal about wanting to reduce harm and trauma in the world. And this very grandiose, but yet totally inspiring notion of eliminating sexual violence. I really like that. Really feels like a worthy thing to pursue to me. So that's what I want to do. That's what I am doing. That's why I study the blueprints. That's why I'm an erotic blueprint coach, so that I can increase the safety and joy in the world, help people realize their authentic sexual selves, shed the shame, and find out what it feels like for the rest of the life. This is the thing about the blueprints. It's like, oh, it's about sex, but guess what? It's really about your life.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It shows up everywhere.
It's foundational.
And the more authentic and plugged in and engaged I am with my sexuality, the more the rest of my life benefits. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have two of my fellow blueprint coaches on the call with me today. This is fantastic.
Yeah. It's fun because I don't know either of you well, so this is a good opportunity to get to exchange. Yeah.
Well, we're going to learn a lot about each other, as well as our viewers will learn a lot about us as well as we get to know each other. So it's a great all-around win. Win-win. So we always start these conversations with me asking each of my guests to let our viewers know what is empowered consent. I think that's a newer, though people are getting a little more clued in after doing so many of these, but it's a newer topic. It's a newer definition for consent. It's a newer way of approaching consent. So what does empowered consent mean to each of you?
Sure, I'm happy to go first on this one. As I was thinking about this and thinking about what I might want to say, I really started thinking about just the word power itself. And for whatever reason, it led me back into thinking about my past 1,000,000 years ago when I was in college and studying physics. And I was like, what is the definition of power? And so I went and looked that up, and it's the amount of energy transferred or converted per unit of time. And it turns out that to me, when it comes to the concept of empowered consent, that really, really, really rings true. It's really all about the attention, the contact, the intention, the action being directed toward maintaining consent over time. So without both the effort and the time, there's no power, and we don't have empowered consent. We just have maybe a discrete instance of consent and left it behind. So that's been really fun for me to think about for the past few days. So in order for me to stand in my own power, I've got to learn and then choose to apply an ongoing stream of energy into my consent conversations. And I think maybe for a lot of people, when we talk about consent, immediately sexuality comes to mind, but that really isn't the only place to do this. Right? It applies to all relationships, or I would argue it certainly could apply to all relationships, and there might be real benefit to that.
Yeah, that's part of the exploration, or the purpose behind this exploration, is to make sure that we're always bringing it to this being a practice in all areas of our life. And I love where you're coming from here, Ryan. I mean, this is not something anyone has ever said. It's just one of the reasons that I love having new, fresh voices on here all the time, because I'm always getting new understanding. Consent is consent, right? It's a yes or a no answer. I do consent to do an experience, or I don't consent to that, right? But empowered, when you add empowerment to that voice, to that decision making, that adds a lot in there. So I really love where you're coming from with the sustained energy over time of continuing to check into and participate in consent. Thank you.
Sure.
What about for you, Alex?
I love that description about that sustained energy over time, and it fits well. It's a very well described description of what I kind of already do, sort of without words. Like that's kind of what I've learned is like it has to be continual. It has to be constantly, often checking in, like where am I in this consent, and where am I still a yes, am I still a no kind of thing. Like that kind of thing. So yeah, I love that. When I was thinking about empowered consent, to me, the first thing that comes up is often about in every conversation or every relationship, there's a power dynamic that happens, and understanding where you are in that power dynamic is very important, and it's very key to being able to be really clear with your own consent. I think consent to me is pretty much, you need to know where your yes and no are. And so many people don't even know that part. They don't know what their clear yes and no are. For me, from trauma survivor and people I work with trauma, sometimes that stuff is so buried because it's underneath layers and patterns of having to say yes or having to do things that other people have forced or enforced them to do. So sometimes it's really hard to get under the layers to actually know what your real yes and no are. So I think that empowered consent is one of those places where you've delved in to find what that true yes and no are for you for consent. Like you're powering yourself up with your truth, your own wisdom, and what it is that's okay for you and what's not okay for you. So that's, to me, empowered means I've come to myself. I've come into myself and really listened to what my yes and no, what my consent is.
You've attained your own mastery over the power dynamics within you and then outside of you as well.
Right.
I mean, the higher differential, that's not the right word. The bigger the difference in power, the more inability we have in creating consent.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So, but if within us, we're having, self-defeating or trauma-triggered emotional reactivity or responsiveness that's creating, pushing us down maybe into a shame cycle. Shame makes us very little, right? So if we have internal power dynamics that are making us small, then how can we really rise up to create, have full capacity to give empowered consent?
Right.
So empowered consent, I love that you're talking about power dynamics there. For me, there's that inner mastery is critical, and not that we always have inner mastery, right? But it's an awareness, an agency of knowing I'm in a place right now where I have the capacity to give consent or I don't. So actually, I love giving this. This is the Consent Academy has a definition for consent, which really matches for me a lot. And a link to their contact information is in the description, as well as, everybody, a link to the Erotic Blueprint quiz if you're curious, because we're all Erotic Blueprint coaches here. What is that? Go check out the link and follow that and find out what your blueprint is.
Yeah, it's fun.
And you can always reach out to me or probably any of us if you would like to figure that out just a little bit further as well. But the Consent Academy, they are just amazing. They all volunteer and they do a lot of really good work around consent. They say the consent is, you have to have the capacity, information, agency, and ability to give an honest and authentic answer without coercion or undue influence. I also like to add into that an emotional maturity or the ability to emotionally regulate, because like we were talking about prior to our call, not only do we want to be able to speak our voices, but we want to make sure that we're listening to others without influencing them in a negative way as well, right? Are we so in our own agenda that we're not creating a space for others to comfortably give us their answer as well. So I think not only do we have to have our own inner mastery of our voice, but we have to have that mastery to regulate our emotional responsiveness to other people's answers when we're asking for consent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yum.
Yeah.
Yummy stuff. So what then is, we always then go, question 2 is, we're going to define the topic for our viewers. What is active listening?
So for me, active listening, and the reason I was telling both of you before we got on this call, the reason I chose this as something I feel like I can talk about is all the training that I've done about really checking in and listening to what's inside of me, and being present with both me and what's going, whoever's in front of me. So being present with both of these is actively listening to both. And if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I want to actively listen to them. I want to not only hear their words, I want to also feel the energy that's behind those words. I notice what's happening in their body, what kind of patterns they might have in their body. If they're often, people have a twitch or something, if something's uncomfortable. So I can notice these things. Like there's this whole body of, my whole system gets involved in when I really drop into active listening. What I consider active listening, I'm listening to everything that's going on for them. And at the same time, I'm keeping up tabs on what's going on for me to see, am I starting to respond? Am I do I have an impulse to jump in and stop whatever they're saying? Do I have some impulse to react or change or just respond to whatever they're saying? What's going on for me? Sometimes it's, there's something to be said, but sometimes it's really good to just notice what's going on and stay quiet. That's also active listening to me, is to really pay attention to what wants to be in that space between us. What words, what energy, what wants to be in that space between us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I love a lot of that, in particular the calling out the multidimensional aspect of it. It's not just about auditory input, right? It's really about communication, and communication between two people or more people involves all kinds of things besides just the sounds that we might hear through our ears. And then that leads me to think about how active listening really is a skill. It's not something you just, can do because you've learned the definition. It takes a lot of practice. And I would say it's a never-ending journey, right? I'm certainly not a master of active listening. I just try to do the best that I can, dang it.
Yeah.
And it's really because there are so many moving parts, like we've described both in the concept of empowered consent and in active listening, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of stuff to keep track of. What's my internal state? What's my internal mental state, my internal energetic state? How is that interacting with theirs? How much am I reading theirs? How much am I aware of those? It's I feel myself becoming overwhelmed as I talk about it. And so maybe that's an important piece to call out too, is active listening is a skill that is learned over time. And there's huge benefit to doing it in the way that you can, right? And maybe one of the most basic ways I think of active listening is that when I am listening to another person in communication, that is all I am doing, is listening. The tendency, especially in a heated exchange, is to be formulating my response. Ready to respond. I know how I'm going to retort that. I know how I'm going to shut that down. And I'm going to one up that, right? Turn all that stuff off somehow, right? That's the skill. Turn that stuff off and just listen. And then take the time that's needed afterwards to formulate a response, if there's even one needed. So that's another aspect of it that I was thinking about, is gosh, our culture is one of, let's go, let's get it done, let's get it done now. And I think active listening is just a slow process relative to, the back and forth pace at which we typically communicate. So really requires slowing down.
Yum. I mean, I'm a
That,
huge fan of slowing down. So just saying that, I just,
yes.
everything just this
Oh, good.
nice deep breath,
That feels
right?
really good in my body. So thank you for saying that. Like I could feel that
Yum.
dropping in of like slowing down and kind of
Right. And I was
the
talking so fast. I got going so fast. Slow down. My goodness.
Well, and that's critical, right? That presence.
Yeah.
I mean, the human potential coach training. I'm also a human potential coach, all of you, and I'm referencing them because they taught me so much about presence, mindfulness, and active listening in all coaching. And so there's a link to them up in the description as well. If any of you would like to check out the work that they do, really amazing stuff. They really talk about 4 different levels of listening. And one of those is that what you pointed to, Ryan, which is you're not listening, you're formulating, right? We're reacting as someone else is talking, either to protect or to dispute or try to connect. But whatever it is, we're not present with that person and where they are coming from. We're just all in here, usually, right? And the next one is actually coming out and listening, but maybe just to the words. We're not listening to body cues, but we're listening a little bit more. We're outside of our own head. We're listening a little bit more. We're not looking at body language, leaning in, leaning out, tone of voice, right? We're just listening to the words and maybe defining according to that. The third level is taking it that much further, right? Now you're listening to the cues. You're aware of the 3 different energies in the room or in the space, which is me, the person talking, and all that energy between us. We're mirroring back. We're able to say, oh, this is what I heard from you. Right?
Really important
Leaning
part.
in. Yeah, all of that. And then that 4th level, that meta competency with active listening, is that deeper presence where we are seeing not just the body language and what's between us, but the lower and higher levels of what's being said and communicated, right? The U.S. Institute of Peace, I always like to look stuff up because I just think it's so fun, says that active listening is a way of listening and responding to a person that improves mutual understanding. And I think that's between people. Active listening is generally we see it most in coaching or therapy or right, psychology. But as everybody watching, before we came on here, we were talking about how much it influences us on a personal level too, to be really bringing all of that together, not only in our practice, but with people that we're in relationship with as well. Yum. What do you want our viewers to know? Because I think we could talk about just consent, or we could talk about active listening the whole time, but we're going to put those together. What do you want our viewers to know about active listening and how it impacts empowered consent, or why it's important to put these 2 in the same topic, same conversation?
You want to go take that one first?
Sure. I sort of alluded to it earlier, but one of the things that came up for me as I was thinking about this and in life really is, my goodness, is this a lot of work? And I wonder, if someone is hearing this or watching and maybe hearing about some of these concepts for the first time, does this sound exhausting? And this whole idea that you can't stop, right? It's like we have to keep on working at it. And I just, wonder if people might feel like this is too much work and how I might respond to that. And I guess my response is really to ask the question, like, well, what makes it worthwhile? Like, what do we gain from practicing this? So maybe I just offer that as a question. Why?
Yeah, both. Why consent? Why active listening? Why both of them? Is that?
Yeah, I mean,
all of it, right?
sort of talking about them together, right? As if you're
Yeah.
doing stuff at the same time and that they are a part of each other. And it's like, oh my goodness, like I have to sustain some engagement over time and all this active listening and slowing down. And it's like, what actually really made me think of, I just remembered, I remember earlier in my life, this wasn't so much a problem for me, but a little bit. But this sort of old trope of like the boyfriend and girlfriend, and the boyfriend is just like complaining all the time because the girlfriend just wants to work on the relationship. And how I can interpret that now, later on, is, well, yeah, because if you work on the relationship, dude, then you will get what you want in ways that you never imagined were possible. If you keep doing it the way you want to do it and skip the relationship part, well, forget about it. And so building, like, this is what we're doing, is building relationship. Empowered consent, active listening, that's relationship work. So if it sounds like a lot of work, then what's the prize? Well, there are lots of prizes. One of them is a rich and deep relationship and a physical connection that just knocks anything else out of the water. Like, there's just no contest. Like, I'm so glad to be practicing as I am now and not still stuck in my 17-year-old body, 17-year-old mindset, 17-year-old view of the world. It just makes a huge difference. So that was one of the things I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. I think it's it inspired me a little bit more into what I think I would want people to know, why it's important to, because it is exhausting, and somebody who has certain kinds of trauma patterns will find it extremely exhausting and want to run away. Like they will, there's all these patterns about like, let's stop, let's not get there, let's not go there. And partly because if they've tried to have some of these conversations, they've been hurt or re-injured in some way because of trust and things like that. So for me, what I've seen happen for myself and for others is when we continue to try to have these hard conversations, getting into our real consent, getting into like being actively, trying to actively listen to somebody who might feel very hard, scary to listen to. If we keep doing that, we're building our own self-trust. We're building our own resilience. We're building our own, we're kind of learning to regulate our own nervous system so that our life feels so much easier and so less anxiety provoking. And, when we trust ourselves, things change forever in how we interact with other people. So I think that even if it's difficult to face these types of conversations, the consent conversations and learning about consent and having active listening, I think it's really building ourselves. It's really it's such a good thing for ourselves. My whole nervous system so much calmed down after I used to be super anxiety, have a lot of anxiety. My whole nervous system is so calm now. And I still get activated when I know I have to have a hard conversation. There's still activation, but I can like, oh, yeah, okay, take care. It's okay. It's okay. We can do this. I can do this. I can have this conversation.
Yeah.
So the practice of it even though it seems like it might be hard and tough and exhausting, it's so worth it.
I want to play with that just a little bit, if that's okay. I want to also say, yes, thank you for pointing that out, because I think that is something that stops a lot of people from diving in to consent, right? There's so much around, you say the word consent and some people are like, contract, run away. I don't know how to do this. It's going to be a lot of work. I might say or do something wrong, right?
Indeed you will.
Maybe.
Yeah.
However, right, empowered consent, we're exploring all of this with an approach to finding ways to make it accessible, make it fun and exciting even. Yes, there are consent conversations or active listening conversations that may be difficult. We always have areas in life where we have to talk about the difficult things, but there's also lots of ways to do it that's super fun,
Oh, yeah.
sexy, that we can get curious, right? That we can make little games around, and we can build our capacity to listen to each other in a way that is fun and delightful and makes us want to open up and lean into each other. So yes, while it can be hard, it can be difficult, and there certainly will be those times in life that we just need to show up for those conversations.
Mhm.
We can also
Play.
use these practices, as with so many practices, to gain that mastery and gain our ability to release so much stress and make life more joyful and bring intimacy and pleasure into our lives. Like, we can do so much of that and build those capacities in ways that feels yummy to do it.
Mhm.
Right.
It's interesting you bring that up. I agree. There's a lot of fun games and play to play with consent and to play with listening and to play with feedback of, I heard you ask for this, or I heard you say this kind of thing. There's a lot of fun games. In fact, I've got a course I'm working on right now that'll be launched in November around touch capacity. And if you're touch avoidant, most of the work there is about creating safety and consent. So there's a lot of fun little games in there about playing with consent and playing with games around safety and consent. So.
Yeah, are you going to give us, at the end of our conversation, everyone watching, we do a little resource roundtable.
Right.
And if we have anything to offer you as far as this gorgeous course that Alex is developing, or ways to work with us, we're going to let you know at the end of our conversation so you can consensually stay on to be sold to or not. Not that you were trying to do that, Alex. I just want to let people know.
There are fun
please
ways.
stay on, because that sounds super juicy and yummy.
Yeah, that sounds
There
fun.
are fun ways to play with it. And so, yeah, I do want to say that, like, even though I know I talked about the hard parts of the conversations, there are fun ways to play with it to expand that ability and to help yourself learn to be regulated within that so you can actually have those hard conversations better.
Yep. Yeah, that's the part I love about this being brought up is, of course, yes, when is the right time to practice this stuff?
Yeah.
When it's super hard and super gnarly and you're in the depths of the time to practice is when it's fun. Time to practice is when it's easier, because then you're building the skills that are needed to see you through the tough ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can explore a couple of those for our viewers. So number one, let's give some components. What are some components of active listening during consent conversations that might be important for people to know? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to look for?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one thing we're trying to look for is making sure that both people are truly on the same page. So there's a reflection, right? Part of active listening can be actually repeating back to the other person what you heard them say. So let's confirm, right? Are you, person says, I'm interested and willing to explore something about, my, I don't know, kissing, let's just say kissing. And so they say some things about kissing. And so in order to convey that you really heard what they said, you repeat it back to them. And there's some back and forth there that can help draw out the specifics of the thing. One of the things that I think comes up is that people are too general initially. So you want to explore kissing. Okay, do you like it if I put my tongue in your mouth and run it all around your teeth and stuff? And then they go, ooh, no, that's gross. I don't like that. Say, oh, okay, so now we need to talk in a little bit more detail about what you mean by kissing. So describe that for me some more, and then repeat back what they said. So I think that's one, and I think that's a game to play. That's just fun back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, clarifying.
Yeah, clarifying.
Right. And I think instead of as well, I want to add into that, because yes, and gorgeous. And I want to say for active listening, that conversation, non-active or active, can go a couple different ways. Non-active listening can be, well, I heard you say you want to explore kissing, so let's get in there. right?
Mm-hmm.
Active listening is, I think I heard you say you want to explore some kissing. Did you mean this? Like you asked, did you mean this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then what did you mean? And then once they tell you, okay, now I've heard you say this. Is that what you want? And what does that look like, right? So keeping asking instead of telling or getting attached to what we think we heard from them.
Right.
Curiosity, people.
Yeah,
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Playfulness and
just coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Did we say it at the same time?
Well,
Sure.
I was right after you. That was what came in mind, is curiosity. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Curiosity and willingness to explore and play. Like just
Play.
explore.
Oh my God.
Explore and play. Like curiosity is so key. Like, yes, that's like number one. But the willingness to explore, let's just explore this with curiosity. Like, what does this actually mean to you? What do these words actually mean to you?
Right.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Curiosity and adding a yes and play. Right. I think as adults in our culture, I don't know, I feel discouraged from playing. Like I push back against that as hard as I can, as often as I can. But, the implication is, hey, aren't you getting a little old for that sort of behavior? I'm like, no, I'm not. And in these conversations, like bring your play. If there's not laughter going on during these conversations, then maybe you're working too hard. I don't know. It can be fun, right? So find the fun. Where is the fun, right?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking it's such a heavy, serious thing, oh God, we've got to have another consent conversation. It's like, it's playtime, right? Make it fun. Look for the fun.
How much fun can you have in exploring this?
Yeah.
Yeah. How funny can it be? It can be hilarious.
So one of the components is this mirroring back, right? And then we added in, though, this isn't necessarily an active listening component, but I think in with consent, and when we're making it lighthearted, even if we're not lighthearted, adding curiosity in there, right?
Yeah.
To really, I think curiosity softens us.
Yeah.
So adding curiosity, what are other components of active listening do you think that are important?
If you want to add in some of the next levels, it's about noticing what's happening in a person's body or what they're doing or how they're moving their body. Because often we have a habitual movement when things get uncomfortable to say, or we get shy, or we have some emotion come up. We'll have a habitual movement that we do. And so if an active listener can just notice that and say, hey, I notice every time you talk about this, you turn your head, or like,
why is that?
Why do you know? Did you know it? Did you know that? What do you know why? Like, it's just that's the next level, and the next layer of that would be to just start connecting in with the body that way. And it's just fun to play with. Oh, I noticed that.
Yeah, body language, right? We're looking beyond just the words that are said.
Yeah.
What about eye contact? In not all cultures, but eye contact often will give people the understanding that you're right there present with them, right?
Yeah. For a trauma survivor, eye contact is hard. So it's actually very challenging for many trauma survivors to have eye contact.
Really good point.
So the better thing is to be grounded and fully present. With soft eye gaze, you can look at somebody in the eyes, but soft eye gaze is better than eye contact. For trauma survivors, not everybody.
It's less threatening, right?
Yes, it's less threatening.
I could guess that this, tell me what you're saying, could be pretty threatening.
I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Especially those with the energetic blueprint are going to be like, oh no.
Yeah, that's too penetrating, right?
It's penetrating.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's a great point. Yeah. That's a sexual blueprint.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it's an interesting, there's a question there about consent, right?
Right.
Is there a consent conversation to have about direct eye contact?
Yeah.
Maybe there is.
Yeah. And not all cultures are a fan of direct eye contact.
Right.
It's listed as one of the tools of active listening. But I love that we're doing this exploration because that's not always going to be the right tool. So
Right.
to really watch body language and watch what the person that you're listening to and how they're responding to you, right? And asking them what they need here.
Right. And we just demonstrated one of those things. If you go to look at me in direct eye contact and I don't feel 100% safe with you or even 90% safe with you, I'm going to have a response by moving back or not looking at you, or I'm going to have some kind of response to that.
Mm-hmm.
So as a person trying to listen, I want to notice that if I can.
Mm-hmm.
What impact I'm having on that person is just by what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Critical when it comes to consent too, right?
Yes.
If I'm going to ask you to engage in an activity with me, sexual or not, I'm going to ask you for something. I want to be paying attention to not only the words come out of your mouth, because so many people have trauma or just trigger responses and have a hard time speaking what their real truth is, saying no or saying yes, depending on what's happening for them internally. I'm going to not listen only to the words you say, but I'm going to watch your body language. Oh, we lost Ryan. Hopefully, Ryan, we get you back. Right? Body language and tone of voice when someone gives me their consent. Oh, yeah. That was fast. Yay, you're back.
Sorry about that. I clicked something and terrible things happened.
Well, it took 2 seconds, so we're glad you're back with us so quickly. Yeah, we were just talking about how that watching body language and tone of voice is actually critical, not just in active listening, but in consent. Well, that's why they go so much together. Right. Yeah. Yeah. What else here? I mean, you mentioned earlier this witnessing, Alex.
Oh, yes. So it goes with just paying attention to what's going on for them, like their body language, but also witnessing yourself, I think is really important. So I think active listening, it's really good if you can get in your own grounded, centered space and then try to have this active listening conversation with somebody, because then you can be in a more regulated, emotionally regulated place for them, and you can pay attention a lot better to both yourself and to what's happening. So to me, self-witnessing, like witnessing what's going on for myself, and then witnessing for them is noticing energetically, if you're attuned to that, or noticing body language, noticing the words that they're using, noticing what they're leaving out sometimes, what words they're not using. It's kind of also can be, interesting to see that, oh, I can say the words, but they're not saying those words, like things like that. So
for our viewers, emotionally regulated.
Oh, yes. So emotionally regulated is we all have this sort of window that we can like go up and down. Our emotions go high and low, high and low, high and low. And so when we get emotionally dysregulated is when we go outside of that. Something bumps us outside of that window. And so we'd like to live our lives in this emotionally regulated window. And then when we get bumped out, we need to learn some resources on how to nourish ourselves in those spaces, or notice that it's happening. Sometimes we don't even notice that it's happening. So being able to learn when you're dysregulated, jumping out of that window of being regulated, that window of tolerance of our emotional system going up and down. We have a window of tolerance. So that's what I'm talking about. We can stay more emotionally regulated when we're grounded and centered in ourselves.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on around us, if we can stay grounded and centered in ourselves, we stay much more emotionally regulated.
Right.
And that doesn't mean, does it? Just for people, I know I've heard this and people have said, well, that sounds like I can't have any emotions, right?
No,
that's not what that means, people.
It's a window of tolerance. It's a window of tolerance of our emotions going up and down. And then sometimes they shoot out of that window of tolerance. And then we're like, oh my God, we're triggered. And we can't, like, it just we've dysregulated means like something's going on and we're not in our normal zone. And so we want to, notice that and learn how to address that in ourselves if we can.
Right.
Thank you.
But the normal zone can cover quite a broad range of emotions, right? Super happy to totally distraught without going outside. So it's not like an emotionless, bland, boring state.
Right. It sounds like that for people.
It's a zone that we can be in, and can be really wide, or some people can have it really small, and some people can have really wide ones. So
I think a good example when it comes to something like active listening and empowered consent, we were talking about watching what is my agenda? What am I asking for? What is their agenda, right? And if I'm not getting what I'm asking for, am I able to really show up and celebrate that they're giving me their truth? Or am I going to go into a trigger defensive or attacking mode? Or am I going to go into a poor me victim mode? Am I going to do something that's not me celebrating and honoring what another person is saying to me?
Right.
Sure.
Right? If someone says no, how many people do you talk to? I talk to, because helping people speak their truth, both inside and outside of their sex lives, though especially in their sex lives, is my whole thing. I fucking love it. Excuse me, I love to cuss on these, and I fucking love it. So many people tell me that it's just easier to go along. It's easier to have sex or not have sex than to face the emotional response that their partner's going to give them.
Yeah.
Right. So they go into fawning, or they end up having sex when they really didn't want to, because it's just easier. Right. And what's happening with that person that's having sex, even though the other one doesn't, right? They're not in an emotionally regulated place where they're showing up for their lover as well.
Right. Nobody gets what they want.
Me.
Yeah.
Need. Sound right in that emotional regulation zone, or how does that land?
I mean, the description you said is they go into that fawn, or they go into, they have sex when they're not wanting to. That's a dysregulated place for that person. They're not in their zone of regulation. They're in they've been bumped out for some reason or another. They've kind of bumped out of that regulation zone. So learning to notice that in ourselves, and that we did do that, and to not judge ourselves for it. There's a reason behind doing it. There's always a really good reason why we're doing the things we're doing. And so, but we judge ourselves for that. I had sex again when I didn't want it. Like, it happened again. Like those kinds of things can happen inside ourselves.
Or we blame the other person.
Yeah.
That's the other the other side of that, is that we blame the other person. They're always asking, and I have to comply somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Judgment
this is
directed.
Different too. I just want to point out really quickly, Ryan, and then I want to hear you. That is very different space from actively choosing to give something to your partner.
Absolutely.
We work a lot in sexuality with an awareness of, when am I giving to someone from choice, and when am I being given to from choice? When am I receiving from choice? And so there's a big place of empowered choice, of choosing to have sex, to give to your partner from a really empowered place that feels good to you, to give to them as well. That's a whole different story from what we're talking about.
A really good story too.
True, Ryan.
Yeah. The wheel of consent is what we're sort of pointing at there, right? Beautiful stuff. That I was going to say, it just came up in a couple of comments. Like, I'd been thinking about another aspect of active listening as really practicing non-judgment And that just came up in a couple of things that both of you said, is like directing judgment inward toward myself for doing this thing again that I don't want to do, or directing it outwards and blaming somebody else. As part of the consent picture and the power dynamics in consent, but also as a part of active listening. I feel in my experience tells me that the more I can do to set my judgment aside is what makes it possible to really listen. If my judgment is too engaged, then what it's just not going to translate, because it's coming through the filter of my belief system, which is probably the source of most of my judgments. And then it's all messed up. And so what this person is attempting to communicate gets filtered through, and I don't even hear what they're saying. So practicing non-judgment, another really important piece, I think.
So huge.
Totally agree. Non-judgment.
Yeah.
And as coaches, oh my gosh, it's one of the most important parts of being a coach in my mind, is the ability to like accept another person and not judge them. I mean, they're coming to me for help. And if what I give them is judgment, then I should be paying them, I guess. There should be a fine or something. I've failed in my job if that's what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah. Right there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet often this unsaid stuff, or this misread stuff, or the ambiguous consent, or the not listened to consent, all of those things fester in our closest relationships more than anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go away just because they're not said, or they're not said correctly, or not heard.
Yeah, they become little secrets.
And they
little
just
drips
fester inside. And then that bleeds out into all other areas of your relationship together.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a professor that taught sexuality that I've read a couple of books by him. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he wrote his it's called Sexual Crucible. So he talks about human sexuality, and he says that pretty much anything that happens, any challenges that are happening in the bedroom actually stem from things happening outside of the bedroom. So if there's miscommunications outside of the bedroom, I mean, in the day-to-day relationship part, they will show up in the bedroom in some way, shape, or form. So it permeates everything. It's not just for certain areas of our life. It's something that we need to just be aware of, that it's in everything.
Yeah. I mean, I always say that foreplay starts from the moment you've finished whatever sexual encounter you've had until the next time you have one.
Absolutely.
Together, until you engage again. All of that good or not so good stuff between you is what really paints the picture of your sexual connection.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that by David Schnarch? How do you say his name? Yeah. Constructing the Sexual Crucible, an integration of sexual and marital therapy. Just for all of you that might be curious. Yeah. Thank you.
The lay person's book is called Passionate Marriage, and he has his practice in there that I really love, called Hugging Till Relaxed. And it's in my touch capacity course, but it's basically Hugging Till Relaxed is a place. It's actually a place of learning where your consent is and learning where your boundaries and your barriers are. And if you look at the way you hug somebody or touch somebody, you start learning about where you start to disengage from people. So some people are huggers by tapping on the shoulder. Some people are huggers by one arm. Some people are huggers by two arms, but it's short. And then some people are huggers and will hold, and some people will hug and then really sort of drop into it. And so he talks about hugging to relax is that place of when you're holding a baby or a child, you naturally drop into a rapport with that child, and you will relax your body there to kind of mold to their body. But we don't do that as adults. We lose that as adults. We don't mold in and drop into like this place of relaxation when we're touching, hugging somebody or touching somebody. So he talks about this in a way of like really that really tells us a lot about where we start to like pull back
Mm.
from connection. And so when we know where we pull back from connection, it informs us on our, our in this whole conversation about like where's our consent, because we pull back, where's that consent thing in there when we hug and don't hug, and we pull back and we don't pull back, or they hold on a little longer, whatever.
One of my big pet peeves, people. If people are pulling away, let them.
Taking notes. Yeah, let them go. Let them go.
Let them go.
Alex, it made me a little sad to hear you say that, because I love that feeling of what is it? What do you call it? Relaxing into the hug, dropping but you're of course totally right. If I do that with a stranger, we haven't had a consent conversation, and depending on who that stranger is, I actually could cause harm.
Right.
So there's this that push and pull there of like, I really want that, and I feel good and clean about that, but just because I feel that way doesn't mean the other person receives it that way. And if we haven't had any kind of a consent conversation, then anything goes, right?
Right.
Well, and then we come into the meta competencies on a lot of levels of reading energy and really paying attention to body language, right?
Right. Listen, pay attention.
Yeah. If we haven't had how often do you have a consent conversation before hugging? And quite honestly, just to be real, while I wish it was different, y'all, I always take my glasses off when I get serious with y'all. I wish it was different. How often are you going to ask someone for a hug and they're going to say no, even if they don't want one?
In our culture.
So that's a meta competency of paying attention.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so maybe I've come in for the hug even though I didn't want it, but I'm really keeping my chest back. I'm keeping my pelvis back. I'm not relaxing or coming in. If you're noticing that in the hug, then you're just going to give me a little pat and pull away.
Yeah.
Hopefully. You're not going to do what you said, Ryan. You're not going to come all the way in and lean all the way in and melt into me. Right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's another way of active listening without speaking listening.
And calls in the concept of slowing down too. How fast do you go in for a hug? Slow it down.
Slow down.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also one of the keys to active listening is to slow down. I think we haven't named that one yet. One of the keys to active listening is to just be, just slow down.
Yeah.
Slow everything down. Take pause before you say anything. Once there's that break and it's time for you to speak, pause.
Right.
And just breathe into it. Let that be. So slow things down.
Again, I take a nice breath into that. What it means to people to feel heard, viewers, really, this isn't just about you showing up to listen to somebody. All the work it may feel like to become a good active listener, that it may feel like. It's also about what it feels like for you to actually get heard as well. We have clients at times in human potential coaching that call to us to be coaches, and maybe you've experienced this as well in your other work, just to be heard.
Oh,
they
yeah.
just want to actually be witnessed and heard.
Oh, those are some of the biggest moments of...
One of the biggest desires for everyone is to be seen and heard.
And we're starving often, right?
Yeah.
You see it.
Yeah. It's one of the top key missing experiences people have is being seen and heard.
Yeah. One of our deepest needs that most of us are not getting anywhere near enough of. Totally. Yeah. It really, really brings me to think about the children that I have worked with. It is some of the most profound moments were simply those, like coming to a place where they knew somehow that I heard them.
And it can be so healing. It can heal years of stuff.
Yeah.
To have a moment of being seen and heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's huge for me because of my past trauma. It's huge for me to be seen and heard in my authenticity. Not just in the mask I might always be putting out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for someone to show up and look a little bit deeper, oof, that's good stuff.
Yeah, and hold you without judgment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we've talked about some of the aspects and we've played with them. This is so fun. Thank you, by the way. Yummy, juicy stuff. So we have some of what we want to see present for active listening in consent to be occurring. What are some fun games people can play? Bring all this together and practice together.
Well, Alex, it sounds like you're writing a book, so let's hear, let's hear what you've got.
Well,
Give us something, Alex.
I definitely think that couples can practice with this hugging till relax concept and make a container.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to hug for 30 seconds twice a day, and then after that feels good and doesn't feel like it's challenging, you can add, change it to, we're going to hug a minute twice a day. We're going to hug 2 minutes, up to 3-4 minutes, and just see like how you can expand that ability to just hug and relax. And the thing about hugging to relax is that you still have to stand on your own. Even though you're melting into your partner, you can melt into your partner, you still have to stand on your own. You cannot let them support you, and you don't need to support your partner in this hugging to relax. You need to both be able to relax into yourself while hugging each other and stand on your own. So that's one thing that can do. And the Brian Snarch, is that what his name is? Anyway, he talks about it, how his story was his dad didn't like hugs. His dad was not a hugger. And so, but he wanted to hug his dad. So he kept doing this thing with his dad. And so over time, his dad learned how much he loved being hugged. And then, over time would start seeking hugs from him. So it can completely change a relationship between two people to practice something like this.
That's very sweet.
So.
One game that I'm thinking of is a game, one of the certifications, I haven't quite finished it yet, but something called Accelerated Evolution. And one of the things that's taught in there is called a dyad. Now, the dyad is not unique to accelerated evolution; like it exists in all, in similar forms in a lot of other areas. But it's a very formal form of communication. So it's not a conversation. And so I'm thinking about that as it is an excellent way to practice active listening because it calls in the concept of deep presence and contact. It also calls in the listen to listen and then wait before any kind of, like in the dyad, there is no response. But the real practice in the dyad is it's the same statement over and over and over again. So over the course of 20 or 30 or even 40 minutes, you might be passing back the same statement. Tell me something about sex for you. And you just keep doing this for 40 minutes. So one of the active listening pieces of that is to hear that statement anew each time. After the 35th time that your partner has said, tell me something about what sex is for you, hearing that, practicing hearing that as if it was the first time you'd heard it, is a great way to practice the active listening. Being really present in this moment, not the 35 that came before.
Yeah.
So I can't, we can't do a dyad right now, but it's something that people could look up or could look me up if you're interested more in what a dyad is and how that works. It's fairly simple, but super powerful.
And in the dyad, you're going to say, thank you.
Right.
You're going to say, clarify that. Right.
Yeah.
If they've gone on a long journey with their answer and you need a little bit more clarity, clarify that. And what's the third one? Say it again. I don't understand. Say it again. And say it again is just if you don't understand.
If it's too quiet.
Or if it's too quiet.
Yeah.
I think
summarize
you may
that.
be able to play with that a little bit with active listening, and I could be wrong, just by asking a question, whatever the question is, such as, how does being heard make you feel? Or how does being heard impact you positively? Whatever it is. And then you answer, and then I could say, I think I heard you say, and repeat back, is that true? So we could go back and forth, just clarifying each other's answers just as a more active listening practice rather than just hearing each other without clarifying.
Yeah, totally. I think that would take
Right.
it away from a formal dyad, but that doesn't make it an invalid
Right.
I mean, it's certainly a valid exercise and would be a really good one.
Yeah.
Practice repeating. I've been through a work experience actually where that was an explicit part of the exchange. Right? It was like, no matter what, the object was to repeat back to the other person. It wasn't really about whether you didn't hear them or needed more clarification. It was just, you will repeat back what you heard, period. And that was just like how the whole thing went. And it was really interesting. And again, it's about that slowness and about the sort of dissonance with our current culture of like, nobody wants to take the time to do that.
Yeah.
But there's a reward for taking the time to do these things.
Right.
And that's maybe the thing to tap into is like, it's going to be really, really good for all of our relationships. Yeah.
That I was going to also say the mirroring part that you said, Christina, about you know, I heard you say this, like it's a way to really practice playing with active listening. And I keep coming to this one practice in the around safety, not safety, about learning your own consent. I keep wanting to share this one, so I'm going to share it now. Playing with learning your own consent. So many people don't understand where their yes and their no are, and it's often can be seen and felt in our body. And so there's a couple of ways to practice that. And you know, one of them is just very simply to go in, close your eyes, and just get present with your body, and just ask yourself yes and no questions. Ones that have yes and ones that have clear yes and clear no. Like, my name is Alex is a yes. My name is Sally is a no. So like, what does my body feel like when I state myself, my name is Alex? I feel something, and then I give it a moment, and then I state, okay, my name is Sally. I will feel something different. It'll be different in my body. And so we can play with like learning your yes and no's just solo by yourself. You know, where's my yes? How does my yes feel, and how does my no feel? And it's pretty subtle. And just learning that can be really, and it can be fun to play. Oh, do I take the route this way, or do I take the route that way to the grocery store today? And just feel it. What is it, a yes or a no? Like, once you know what it's supposed to, your yes feels like and your no feels like, you can play with it with just fun things around whatever you're doing throughout the day. That's a simple one. Another one I really love to play with and help people is to actually learn their no's, because I was one of these people that said yes a lot too many times. So I needed to learn what my no's were. And so one of the practices I did was this whole, do it with somebody, a dyad, like you said, do it with a partner. And that partner asks you a bunch of questions. And no matter what the answer is that you think that you have, you tell them no. No. Can I hold your hand? No. Can I touch your hair? No. Can I, do this? No. And then, so you practice no, and it's really fun, because then you start laughing, because it's like, well, that's a yes, but I have to say no. And so it's kind of fun to play with, like, no, because there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to say no.
Yeah.
So it's fun to play with no. And then after you do that one, then you can go to, okay, now check in. Is it a yes or a no? And you can say yes or no,
Oh, I love it.
If it's really, and I always say, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no.
Yeah.
If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. If it's like, oh, well, maybe, no, it's a no. You just say no.
I really love the reminder to come into the bodies. Thank you, Alex. We've done it in past conversations, and I'll look it up, y'all. I don't remember exactly the title of one of the conversations we did last year, but it was really about learning how hell yes felt in your body as compared to a yes that didn't feel good. And if you play with that awareness, make sure you're picking yeses that aren't going to re-traumatize when you try to play with feeling those in your body. Like, I really wish I said yes to chicken tacos and I wish I'd gotten fish. Like, what does that feel like? Right?
Mhm.
I said yes to give a ride to the store when I really wanted to sit home and read a book. What did that feel like in your book, in your body? So you start to understand what the different answers feel like. So when you say them, you can tap into that embodied awareness or the no. To piggyback onto your no game, Alex, I love that one. I want to add that whoever you're playing that with can celebrate you every time you say no.
Yeah.
Because there can often be this feeling of not safety. If you play a yes game, right? Create yes answers that feel safe. Just have to say yes to, okay? You don't have to even fulfill any of the yeses, but if you do it yes, for those of you that have a hard time saying yes to stuff, if you do it on either side, a no or a yes, have that person celebrate your answer. Because often saying the no or saying the yes is for some reason not safe to us.
Right.
So getting celebrated and creating a trust and safety that it's okay to speak those words will help rewire us. And we're doing those in safe places, in playful, curious, fun ways first, so that when we're in those situations that are more challenging, more difficult to speak our authentic answer, then we already have it wired into us that it's okay to speak our truth.
Right. Well, the piece I left out was what the person who's asking the questions says. They have to say thank you with whatever that person says. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would, if we're playing sexy games or in a relationship and you're really having fun with these, I would find really cool ways to ultra celebrate, to dramatize those celebrations with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on what feels good for that person, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Celebrating for an energetic is very different than celebrating for a sensual, and very different from celebrating for the sexual.
Yeah, totally.
Or a kinky.
Such a good point.
So, yeah.
I guess I'm also, I have no idea, audience wise, if there are people watching this who are like starting in on this stuff, I want to encourage starting off easy. Look for an easy win. Get together with your partner and make an agreement that for 3 minutes at such and such a time of day that is really a good time for both of you, that you practice some one of these games for 3 minutes. There's no need to become an Olympian overnight and all of this stuff. And you will build your muscles. You will get better at it. It will become easier. It will feel more natural, and you'll start getting the rewards. So come up with a small, easy way to win. Yeah.
Thank you.
A good question you can ask about this, even if you've scheduled a time and you guys come, okay, we're going to have this conversation. Always ask, are you available for this right now?
Started right there.
Started right there. Are you available for this right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, because consent is switchable, right?
Right.
I can have said yes to something, then I can change my mind and say no.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Although I would argue that changing your mind in the middle of something to a yes is not necessarily safe.
Right.
But changing to a no.
Changing to a no
at any moment.
Yeah. Yes can always become a no, but we want to look a little deeper when the no becomes a yes.
Right. Maybe next time. Maybe not right now. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So this has been crazy juicy. I have all these questions. We didn't even get to them because we've just been playing so much. I just love the flow of this conversation.
Yeah.
We are getting closer to the end of it already, which is amazing to me. Time has flown. So I just want to offer each of you the opportunity, if something hasn't been said about creating empowered consent and active listening that you want to bring into the space, just to have a moment to bring that forward. Or if we've said something here that you just want to underline that, magnify that, I want to give you the space to do that as well before we move on to our resource roundtable.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd just kind of reiterate a little bit about like consent is always check in, you know, with are you available for this right now? Things like that. Always check in for consent. And then try to come in back to yourself and be as present as you can with yourself so that you can be as present as you can with whoever you're in conversation with.
Perfect.
I think, gosh, it's not crystal clear to me in my mind right now, so hopefully it will come out and become clear. Maybe you two can help me. Tapping into that concept of like, what are some of our basic, like most deep desires and needs as humans, which is like that real need for connection, the real desire to be seen as your authentic self. And that relationship is core to the human experience. So I guess I just want to offer that if what you want is the highest quality relationship, if what you want is to be seen, if what you want is the ability to see another person, then this is a couple of the key things to practice. Active listening and empowered consent. These are, I mean, they're not like the two things that will get you there, but they are two of the things that are kind of essential. I don't know, I'm not sure it's possible to have really rich and rewarding human relationship if you don't have some version of this stuff plugged into it. So
yeah,
I guess I want to underline that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do this stuff.
Yum.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to add in there that reminder to let it be okay to pause and slow down. To add in that non-judgment and that curiosity, even if it gets hard for a minute, you know, take that pause, slow down. And I loved when you said it can just be 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be this hard, big thing. Let's build that muscle. Let's make it playful. Let's begin in ways that feel safe to really start these journeys together.
Yeah, maybe remember that part too. If you're practicing these things and it doesn't feel fun, then it's time to reset and go and find the fun in it, because what's the point? Be in pleasure, have a good time.
Erotic Blueprint coaches, we love that pleasure.
Pleasure is a birthright for
humans.
For one thing, it's a birthright. Pleasure is a birthright, but pleasure is our power.
Yeah.
If we can't be in pleasure, we've lost a lot of our power.
Yeah. And I want to say quickly too, for those of you, we've talked about in relationships, right? And I think a lot of our formulating here has been, if you have a partner, you know, you're in a relationship, to play these things with them, but you could be single and do this. Find a friend.
Yeah.
You want to do this together? You know, take 3 minutes and practice saying no. I know it's hard for me to say no in these areas, or practice saying yes. I've always wanted to say yes to going and dancing on the tabletop at the club. Can you help me figure out how I can say yes to that? Right?
Yeah.
There's things we want to say yes to that we don't as well, you know?
Yeah.
So,
that's good. I hope we haven't conveyed that this is all about romantic relationships. It's not. It's about all relationships. And in fact, doing some of this stuff with someone you're not romantically involved with can take some of the heat out of it, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it might be really easy for me and fun for me to talk with my friend about dancing on the bar. It might be actually harder for me to bring that to my partner, because I'm like, oh God, what are they going to think if I tell them I have this inside, you know? So play with your friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Absolutely.
Teach your children.
Yeah. Play these things with your kids even, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
My kids and I always do these things together. We often do these things together.
Yeah. Make it accessible. Bring it outside of what we would usually define it as, so that we can practice it in new ways. Explore.
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Exploration and curiosity.
Yummy. We have reached the place where we are going to do our little resource roundtable. And I call it little, but it's not, because this is where you all get a lot if you want to stay with us. I'm all about consent. You all know that. So I put these at the end of our conversation in case you really don't want to hear what is coming up, what we're working on, or how you can work with us or find out more about how to interweave all of this good juiciness we've been talking about into your life. You can pop off now. And if you don't want to stay, so happy you were here with us, and thank you for joining us. And if you do want to stay, if you do want to stay and you want to hear more, so happy you're here with us, and thanks for joining us. All right. So do either of you want to offer anything at this point and let people know what you're up to? I know you have some stuff going on, Alex.
Yeah. Do you want to start, Ryan?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. So I got really interested in, I don't know how I'm not exactly sure how the spark came to light, but about 2 months ago, I was like, I know all these games of playing with touch. And I read an article about how touch is so important for us and how we are, as a world, wide thing, we're touch deprived right now, being in pandemic or having gone through pandemic, wherever we are, we're touch deprived. And those of us who are single often are touch deprived. But even if we're not single, say I live with my family, and so I'm not fully touch deprived, but if I'm going out in the community, I'm interacting with people, I'm like, shaking hands or touching people and just getting hugs or whatever out in the community, I'm filling my touch tank up out in the community as well. So even if pandemic, I don't go do that, I'm only getting it from my family, I'm still getting touch deprived from that. So and touch is so very important. Like, there are so many things that touch does for us. If a baby is not held in touch, they will fail to thrive. They will not survive. So touch is like our first way of connection with people, and our way of like sort of developing any connection. And that connection is like key to our survival, really, and the key to us thriving. So touch was like, let me explore this. So I ran across some articles about how touch is we're so touch deprived right now. So some of the indicators of being touch deprived is like our heart rate increases, our respiration rate increases, our blood pressure increases, we get more muscle tension, we have more stress hormone in our system, our cortisol raises, we have an increase in depression, we have difficulty sleeping, we have lower satisfaction with our relationships, we have increased anxiety. So like, these are all the bad things. And so what touch does is it helps our mental, emotional, and physical health in a lot of different ways. It stimulates these pressure receptors that support the transport of the signals to our vagus nerve, which calms us down, slows us down, helps our nervous system all calm down and slow down. It also helps to build and support our immune system. And so we can fight illness a lot easier if we get touched more, or if we touch if we feel that sensation of being touched. It increases our hormones of oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and which are all those things that counter the effects of the stress hormone of cortisol. So it can affect our hormones as well. So physically, it can affect us. It can lower our blood pressure, lower our heart rate, reduces our pain receptors. It can help us regulate our sleep, also regulate our digestion if we have any digestion issues, and of course it can help us build healthy relationships. So touch is super, super important. So it's like, over the years, I used to be what I'd call touch avoidant. I could not fall asleep if my husband was touching me. And if he touched me in the middle of the night, I would jump. I would jump out of bed. My cat would jump on me. I'd jump out of bed. Like, anytime I'd get touched in the middle of the night, my system went, ah! And so I'm not like that now. I actually can't fall asleep without being snuggled and held and hugged and caressed by my husband. Like, if he doesn't come to bed at the same time as me, I have a hard time falling asleep, because he's very, in Erotic Blueprint's terms, he's a sensual. He loves to use his hands and touch me. So I've learned to really love that, and I have a hard time going to sleep without that. So I was like, how did I get from touch avoidant to like loving touch like that? So I went through all of the trainings and all the things that I've been doing over the time. And I'm like, well, it's a set of 20, I've kind of calculated out to 25 right now. I've put it in, of things that I've tried and done that have helped me expand my ability to receive and really be nourished by touch. And most of this is about, how can I receive touch? Now, often when we think about touch, we're thinking about how we give touch. How are we giving touch to our partners or whatever? How are we giving touch to our friends? But this is all about how do I receive touch? When you get to touch, when you get to the touch fluent category, it starts going into how do I give touch and receive it at the same time? How do I receive from whatever I'm giving? So like there's
So you're
more,
putting all those 25 things into your course?
that'll all be in the course. And so to start this, and for this month, I have a quiz, and we put that little quiz link in the interactive, in the post above there.
It's up in the description, everyone. The quiz link, check that out.
It's in the description, and then, or you can go to my website, which is also up there, and there's a quiz button on there. But anyway,
I know if you're on YouTube, it might be below us. On Facebook, it's above us.
Okay. Look above or below.
Yeah.
So anyway, the touch quiz just gives you a starting point. The idea would be to take the quiz in where you're feeling right now, not necessarily how you normally feel or how you every day feel, but like where am I right now? So today I might be touch avoidant, tomorrow I might be touch fluent. Like it just depends. So there's 4 categories that you'll get in, and then when you take the quiz, it'll give you some information about what that category is like and give you a sample practice of what you can practice to expand your capacity in that touch type. So
nice. And then from the quiz, it'll direct you so people can work with you and figure that out. Okay,
it'll direct you to get on a list if you want to know about the course that's when the course gets launched. Then you'll get if you get on that list, and it'll tell you'll get an email when the course gets launched in November. So we're just cleaning up and making the workbooks pretty and making videos about the demonstration videos and things like that. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. That sounds just delicious.
Yeah,
everyone check it out. Go take the quiz and go to Alex's website, sign up for that list so that you can get notified. Yum, yum, yum.
Yeah. Hey. So anyway, that's my exciting news right now is this I've been immersed in the area of touch lately. And how can you touch yourself and like really fill up your body with you? I mean, these practices are for solo or for partnered. So it's not necessarily just with a partner thing. There are things you can do for yourself too. But some of them practices, like I mentioned earlier, are around consent and safety. So they're kind of more of a conversation.
Well, I want people to keep exploring that, but I want you to go to Alex's website to do so and take that quiz, and you can get more information there. Thank you. Ryan, do you have anything you want to bring forward here?
Well, I guess I would just put it out there that I've got openings. The best way to look me up at this point is to reach out on Facebook. I do have a private account right now, so there's a couple steps there, but I think you all know how it works. And that would be well, I can just tell you, like, what I'm most interested in is helping people who are somewhere in some state of exploration with respect to gender and sexual fluidity. So that's kind of the kind of people that I'm hoping to work with and to offer assistance along the path of finding out what that means for you, how that is going to be realized in your life, what sort of transformation you want to have that leads you more fully into authenticity.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Here, I'm putting the link to your Facebook page.
Perfect. Thank you.
In the chat, because I don't believe that we had that in the description.
Right. Yeah. I don't.
So there it is. Everyone go and do all the little steps. Request Ryan, and he will get back to you.
Yeah.
Pronouns,
totally. Ryan? He and him are fine.
Okay. He'll get back to you. And
I'm so used to them.
Yeah. That sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
And you all know that I put a link up in the description or down in the description to get you that blueprint quiz if you want to take that. I am doing my Speak Desire course is launching real soon here, and the link to go apply for that is up in the description. That's all about getting you heard, understood, and fulfilled. It's all these practices we've been talking about. As well as I'm going to put the link to my Eventbrite. I have a series of workshops coming up, Inner Agency for Deeper Intimacy. And I believe next week is an introduction to the Erotic Blueprints.
Oh, fun.
So go check that out if you want to come. And oh, no, that was you. Let's get back to that link. Give me 1 second, everyone. I'll get you that link. If you want to come and get an introduction to the Erotic Blueprints, go check that out. As always, what a joy it has been to be in this space with all of you.
Yeah, I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
everyone that has been watching and viewing and participating. And those of you that will watch and view and participate, we're so glad that you've come on as well. Alex, Ryan, what a joy.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really grateful for all the information and opinions and thoughts. I have a bigger view now.
Me too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. It's been
great
expansive.
conversation.
As always, everyone, the invitation is empowerment. Have a gorgeous, beauty-filled, pleasure-filled day.
Yeah.